Creative leadership drives productivity and fosters success in a company. Creativity is one of the most important qualities of a modern business leader. Creativity itself is the abundance of rigid structure, a very desirable trait for individual leadership positions to have in a corporate setting. Creative leaders have the ability to look at things in new ways and solve problems by seeing things others don't. Creativity includes words like inventiveness, imagination, innovation, vision, progressiveness, originality, and resourcefulness, just to name few. All these characters are all of these are characteristic of a successful creative leader who are changing our world today. A very warm welcome to the show, season 3 of EI Cafe with Azim, and I am your host Azim Sahir, a human capital specialist, a Lego serious play facilitator, ICF certified coach, and an emotionally intelligent practitioner. Here we are again for another exciting episode, a 30 minutes of valuable learning. Now, you did listen to my brief introduction of the topic. Today's topic is about developing a creative leadership culture, which is a really important aspect in today's business context. The reason being the world is keep on changing, and how do we change our business and our lives? To talk about this, I have a fantastic individual all the way from US, right? Let me introduce her. She's the founder of Work Smart Advantage US, a TEDx and a keynote speaker on the area of creativity, a Lego serious play facilitator. That's how I connected to this particular individual. She believes that organization can prevent turnover in high growth team through creative leadership. So that's why I picked this individual for this particular topic. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome One Lee DuMone to the cafe. One, welcome to the EI Cafe.
Thank you, Azim. It was very nice of you to bring me on today.
Right. First and foremost, on behalf of the CARE, thank you very much for accepting my invitation and spending your valuable time in the cafe next 20-30 minutes, which you're going to share some fantastic insights. How about getting this creative juice coming into people's mind? One, as I said, creativity is one of the most important element. Even the World Economic Forum listed this as an important skill. So this has been created a lot of importance in terms of leadership, organization, and in an educational school arena also. Creativity has been start becoming a picking up, and there have been some schools have included creativity as part of their curriculum. So that's why I choose this particular topic, developing a creative leadership culture, because every human being are a leader in some aspect. But how this creativity is playing a key role in their life is the question mark. So,
Mhm.
one my first question for you to answer is, if you can share something on this, why is it important to bring creativity into the workplace, and particularly as a leader, what would your take is about?
Well, you had mentioned how everyone has some sort of leadership in them, right? And I see the same about creativity. We are all, as human beings, innately creative. So to bring those two innate qualities together, I think is a very powerful tool. So I
Mm,
often, when I do my speaking, I often talk about why do I do my leadership training and team development through creativity?
mm,
I say it's because creativity is a capacity that we all have, right? Creativity, I mean, you can define it as a skill. I choose to define it as a capacity.
mm.
Oil painting is a skill, opera singing is a skill, but the creativity behind it is a capacity that everyone has access to. So when you can bring that capacity into the workplace and train through that and develop people through that capacity, you're tapping into something that everyone has access to. For example, you can train me on accounting as much as you want. I'm never really going to quite get it. but but so everyone in your organization has the capacity to be creative and to increase their capacity for creativity. So that's why I think bringing creativity into the workplace is so important. It's almost like it gives people this access of belonging. because again, you're training someone to train through something everyone has.
mm,
As a leader, I think is important as well, as we saw this past year, how much pivoting we had to do, how much innovation we had to make. The more creative you can be as a leader, the more ideas you can gather from the people who are working with you. I think for me, like that's the almost like the overall umbrella of creative leadership, right? We were talking before we start recording about very traditional leadership, right? And how it's from the top down, and creative leaders really think holistically and work with their teams to come up with solutions rather than top down.
Oh, one, I really like the point that you put about traditional leadership. So let me bring this question before the next one I want to ask you. Why now we are talking about creativity? Why not 15 years ago, 20 years ago? Why we didn't talk about creativity? Or at least 30 years, early 90s, we have not heard about, like late 2000 when the internet booming start, right? The
Yeah.
Y2K and everything coming up. Why now we are talking about creativity? Why not before?
It's so interesting. I think that's interesting because you're right. Like, I feel like, I mean, people were talking about creativity, but creativity didn't become, um, didn't really become a central topic or a central theme until more recently. And I think part of it is because as we progress as you know a global community, and as we progress in individual workplaces, and become more of like, I mean, I don't know how to say it, but more humanistic workplace, and have and have learned and grown. I think this idea of hard skills versus soft skills has kind of come together, and people are starting to really realize, especially, and I want to say, like, when you ask me this question, I now think, like, I think millennials have really forced the issue, right? They really forced the issue, because I remember when I graduated from college and went to an interview for a job, it was definitely the company interviewing me and me hoping they will say yes, right? And I don't think that's the case now. I have so many friends who are in their 30s and younger, who, when they go for an interview, they say it has to fit. It has to be a fit for me. It has to be a cultural fit. It has to be this, that, and the other. So they have parameters. So they're interviewing the company as much as the company is interviewing them. So I think there has been a shift towards more, if you want to call them, like, soft skills. But I do think that shift was pushed forward by the next generations.
Wow. Absolutely. I think I can't agree more than that, what you have said. Now the candidates are very demanding. That's what the organization is saying. They ask a lot of questions. Those days when
Oh
you go,
yeah.
yes, sir, no, sir, we just keep on
Right.
answering the
That's right.
interviewer. Now the other way around, then they give the opportunity to ask questions, and they ask from fantastic. And I think bringing the startup culture is also part of being creative, isn't it? Because
Mm-hmm.
you, from nowhere else, you bring up an industry and suddenly it start booming. I think that's
Right.
also one of the reason, one in that. So as you talk about workplace, let me ask this question from you. How do you bring creativity into the workplace? This is the biggest question I want to point on this podcast, this episode, with the reason being, a lot of organizations come and ask us, we would like to have a creativity and innovation session. How to
Mm-hmm.
change this? How do you bring out creativity? Now, how do you bring this to organization? Where do we start? What do you think?
Right. Well, let me tell you, when I first started 6 years ago, I was bringing arts and crafts to the workplace. It was literally, I really started because I wanted to bring, um, you know, art to the workplace. So I would show up and be like, oh, we're going to have an hour of time to paint or draw. And it was all around professional development. But what I realized was that the corporate world wasn't ready for that, right? It's still important to connect creativity to a business result, or to something like a return. So the way I use creativity now is I attach it to team development and leadership training. So I come in and do team development workshops and leadership training. And the way I do it is through multiple resources. Like, as you mentioned, we are both Lego Serious Play facilitators. I bring creative problem solving into it. So the concept is really to teach people, because a lot of people don't think they're creative. So it's the idea of teaching people tools and skill sets to bring more creativity into the work that they do.
Mm.
It really is. is not big leaps. It's almost, I talk about, you're walking a straight line, you're gonna make a
Mm,
20% turn and go down this slightly creative path. We're not
mm,
having you,
mm.
like, we're not having you do too much, because I feel like it's small changes make a big difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the fact I'd like to share on this, because as we thought about Lego Serious Play, we know the random challenge, right? We also
Mhm.
suddenly, randomly do it, and we post the questions, and the structure don't change, but their stories start changing based on the challenges. That itself, that's my main pitch for them, that you are creative. It's not that you are not trying to understand who you are. I think that itself is, as you said, the capacity. Everybody
Right.
has the capacity. The only problem is we don't test those capacity within us. And
Mhm.
I went through your website also, one that it is really amazing the stuff you do. You do the LSP, then you do the little bit of artistic stuff which you share. um,
Right.
it's awesome. Now, in that context, my next question is: can does experiential learning matters to bring creativity? Because we have seen, as I said, in our context, we were very traditional in terms of people
Mhm.
development. We use very old methodologies, and that's why I really want to bring this concept in. Does this matter, experiential learning?
Experiential learning, I think it really does. And it's funny because I don't use a lot of data in my
Mm,
work. I have a colleague, her name is Janine Lepfer, who does some work called intercultural creativity. And whenever we work together, she's like, oh, and this is because this research shows X, Y, and Z. I was like, it's like, and I get that the research is there. I don't speak much on the research,
mm,
but the fact is there's plenty of research out there that says that people learn better when they
mm,
have experiences.
mm,
And the way I don't know when we decided that as adults, you have to learn by sitting in a desk and, listening to lectures. Well, I guess we learned that pretty early, even in childhood, right? And we take that creativity away from children so early on. So yeah, the idea that the reason why experiential learning, I think, is so important and has a lot of value is because what you're doing is you're eliciting an emotional response out
mm.
of people. And when you get an emotional response out of people, it's more likely, number one, that they're engaged and paying attention. And then
Okay.
it's more likely they're going to retain that information.
All right.
So the more you're able to use different skills or different
Mm,
tools, for
mm,
example, hands-on learning like Lego Serious Play,
mm,
visual learning. So
mm,
you're tapping into all these different modalities that, number one, are going to elicit an emotional response,
mm,
but then you're also tapping into different modalities. So the people in the room
mm.
who have um, diverse cognitive abilities and a diversity of thought, diversity of learning styles,
Mhm.
each person gets something.
Mm. Absolutely. I think that divergent thinking also coming to picture, if I'm not mistaken, where I know the different way of looking at certain things, that itself, and practically it can be practiced, if I'm not mistaken, one. You can, when you learn in that experiential learning, practically can be involved in your workplace, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what we talk about, like the idea that creativity is a capacity. You can learn to tap into your creativity.
All right.
And are you familiar with creative problem solving process?
No, no, forget.
CPS.
No.
Okay. So creative problem solving process is literally a process to be creative, a process to come up with ideas. Because like I said, oftentimes people don't think they're creative. And for those
Mm,
people, like, okay, well, here's a process, right? Let's give you
mm,
this process. You're going to clarify your idea
mm,
using some creative tools.
mm,
Then we're going to ideate using some creative tools,
mm.
develop a plan, and then implement.
Right.
So to be able to give people um, a structure towards creativity,
Mm.
and then as well as the creative tools, then you get those aha moments like, oh,
Uh,
I didn't know I could come up with ideas like this.
Fantastic. I think I need to explore that also, the CPS. So one,
Yeah.
now we talked about workplace. We talked about how important the having that creative environment, the culture. How does leadership play a role in this? How does a leader can be creative and create that environment? Because this is the most of the organization that have that question, because it is no use we just go through all the employees doing these workshops and development process if the top
Mhm.
is not helping or sponsoring or supporting that effort. How does this come into picture?
Well, I think you're right. It's like it's one of those things where individuals, individuals can clearly be
Mm,
creative at work, and they can have their own creative practices at work, at home.
mm,
But to really influence the workplace, it has to come from leadership, right? They have to create this environment where all ideas matter, that they're giving people space to share ideas in a
mm,
psychologically safe environment
mm,
where we're yes anding ideas, right?
mm,
Rather than saying no but, or even worse, not giving people the opportunity, the space to share their ideas. Um, so in this context, I think having a creative leader is very important.
mm,
How you develop a creative leader is, I mean, you cannot force it, right? Like, I can't go in and be like, you have to be a creative leader.
exactly.
People have to see the value of it, and
Mm,
oftentimes is that leader seeing the value of creativity for themselves, seeing
mm,
the value of
mm,
ideation for themselves,
mm,
and having their own aha moment, be like, okay,
mm,
well, if I can do this, then other people can do it.
mm, mm, mm. Fantastic. So I did mention about world is changing very fast. Now, most of the
Mm.
organizations are swiftly changing. Now, one of the episode I had a chat with Poom from Thailand. We talked about strategizing. Now, strategy, it was like 2 years, 3 years before. Now, strategy three months because of
Oh yeah,
so much turbulence happening in the world. So,
yeah.
creative leaders, isn't that a trigger that they have to think that we are changing? So, we need to be creative, start innovating. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think creative leaders are always looking ahead and looking for ideas, right?
Mm,
Has sort of
mm,
like, when you say that, I think of like an open door policy for all ideas to come in and be vetted.
mm.
And I think that is a very valuable tool right now, because as
Mm,
we've seen over the past years, is that the world is moving really quickly.
mm,
And if you're not innovating, I heard this somewhere, I don't know, it was in a book, and now they say in a book or someone said it, like, if you're not innovating, you're dying, right? Like you look at the business who didn't innovate, and
mm,
they're no longer
mm.
here, like
Absolutely,
Blockbuster, like, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, here's a one. You being a creative leader, let's imagine your leadership is not in a creative leadership spectrum, but you have a generation, let's say Gen Z, Gen Y,
Mhm.
they're in the workforce now. They are very innovative, they are very creative, they come up with top. How do we merge this now? Uh, you have creativity in the workplace, but your leadership does not support that.
Mm.
This is challenge one. How can we, what are the key areas, how can we practically evolve these two generations into the one picture to bring
Oh,
creativity?
that's an interesting question. I don't think I don't know if there's like a quick fix to that, because I do have clients and I have friends who work in those type of environments where they want to move
Mm,
quickly, they want to innovate, but
mm,
they're not the they don't have a leadership, they don't have leadership
mm,
that allows for that, or moves as quickly, or is really ready to pivot the way, like you said, Gen Y, Gen Z are willing to do. So I think it's almost just like, I mean, I don't know the solution for it. I think conversations are
mm,
very helpful,
mm,
and that almost has to come from the
mm,
bottom up rather than the top down, because I don't think there's incentive for the top to change
mm,
in a
mm,
situation like that. So I almost feel like and this is what I've been seeing out there, is a group of people or one person who has influence,
mm,
um, creating something,
mm,
like,
mm,
we're going to have an ideation session on Friday afternoons, and see what comes up with that, and bringing the ideas
mm.
to leadership. Um, but and sometimes it works, and honestly, like, sometimes the reality is sometimes it's not going to work, and sometimes you're just going to have to leave and find a place that's more suited for the culture you want to be in.
Mm. That's a very, very, very important element, I think, because the embracing that culture is a bit of creative aspect. Embracing the changing that aspect of leadership, to embrace that Gen Y, Gen Z creative culture is also
Mentality,
being
yeah.
created. Exactly. So it's not that they don't have the capacity, as I said. I think they have the capacity. The only problem is, again, just scratching that, the whole card and get that correct number coming in, so you be the main cash prize winner in that aspect. So one, what, with your experiences with your clients and all, what would be the key challenges organization faces in terms of bringing out creativity, innovation, change? And if you have some example, we'd love to share if you can share as well.
So give me the question again. I'm sorry.
What are the key challenges the
Hmm.
organization faces in terms of creating this organization culture as a leader or as an organization? What would be your
Yeah.
point?
Well, it's the creativity has to be almost embedded in your culture, where everyone has to understand the process of
Mm,
creativity, um, the the willingness of everyone to get involved. So I would say that the biggest challenge is this idea of like embedding it in culture, right? It
mm,
can't just be one person,
mm,
even if it is just the leader saying we're going to be more creative,
mm,
right? What about the middle managers?
mm,
Are they open to ideas? Are they
mm,
listening to? Do they have that open door policy of everyone's ideas matter,
mm,
and are actually listening to ideas and moving it around the organization?
mm,
So I think the biggest challenge is really the idea of embedding it into culture
mm,
versus making it like a one-off workshop. I get a lot of people like,
mm,
oh, can we just do a workshop on creative innovation
mm,
or
mm.
creativity? Yes, and maybe for that small team, it will work. But how do you get this into the rest of your culture?
I think that's a challenge. That's another challenge. That is another challenge most of the way, because when we are done, we get very good feedback. Yes, yes, they start working. But the problem, okay, one, yeah, see, I have a problem. These guys are not executing what they're doing. That's another challenge. I believe it comes now. When you talk about challenge, it can be broken or taken over by the benefits of being creative.
Absolutely,
See,
yeah.
what are some unforeseen benefit you have seen at your work? What sort of benefits organizers have cherished? The success story. What would be
Yeah.
like that?
Well, I mean, the kind of the clear cut ones are, wow, we did all this, we built all these Lego things, like it would just seem like we were playing, but we came up with this idea that we're going to implement right out of a piece of Lego.
Mm,
So sort of like the concrete benefits in those terms.
mm,
Other benefits I see are there's almost like this underlying idea
mm,
of trust building, right? Because in a creative environment, when you do it correctly, you are building psychological safety. You're giving everyone a place to have their voice heard. You're collaborative, and it's true
mm,
collaboration where all
mm,
ideas really do matter, and you're
mm,
combining ideas. And by the time you get to an end result, everyone down the line has had their hand in coming up with the idea one way or another. Even if their idea didn't make it to the finish line, their voice was heard,
mm,
right? So there's this
mm,
underlying trust that you build through this
mm,
process.
mm,
And on a personal level, I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, oh, I've, ever since your workshop, I took up painting, or I'm more creative with my kids now. So I think there's so many levels of benefits to
mm, mm,
creativity on a um on a high level, like how the
mm.
corporation can change, and on the individual level too.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, one before I take to the last one, I want to ask about this statement. I see in
Okay.
your profile, I see on your website. Just give me a small what is about. You say the organization can prevent turnover in high growth teams through creative leadership. What is this
Mhm.
statement about?
Well, I work with a lot of high growth teams. What I see in high growth teams is they're growing so fast that there's not a focus on
Mm,
people, right? They're focused on growth. Their focus is not on developing people or building a culture. So by bringing creativity into the workplace, and again, I know this is not a very quick answer, but there's so many companies right now. It's like, oh, let's do bowling night. Let's have a ping pong table in the office. Let's give free snacks, and that's all amazing. But that's not what people stay for, right? People stay when their voice is heard and
mm,
when they feel they're making a difference. And I
mm,
think through creativity, that's exactly what you're doing,
mm.
and that's how you prevent turnover.
Fantastic. I like the way you put it, because most organizations say you'll be creative when you have a pool table, when you have a ping pong table, and you have video games. But I really like the way you put forward that point. Fantastic. So, the last question: what would be one tip you can give to our listeners as a takeaway to bring that creative leadership mindset, the capability? What would be one or two things you can share with us?
Well, I think again, I always recommend this book. from my mentor. His name is Dr. Robert Maurer. It's called
Okay.
One Small Step Can Change Your Life, the Kaizen Way. And I say that, and that is part of a framework that I developed. I start with curiosity, right?
Mhm.
Follow your curiosities, ask what if, and then takes one small step. If you're curious about something, curiosity is creativity. So you're curious about something, follow that curiosity, and ask what if. Like, what if I applied this one tool for creativity into the workplace, and then take one small step. So you don't overwhelm yourself and you don't overwhelm the people working for you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, my key takeaway on this podcast, the episode, is curiosity. I think that's the first thing we need to have. Curious to be, how do I do next best? How do I come up next? What I'm going to do next, right? How can
Mhm.
I be very competitive? What is the next episode I'm going to do? Who I'm going to bring? That curiosity, I think, it'll be more creative. That's the message I got. So that's the time what we have, ladies and gentlemen, today. And I told my key takeaway what it is. It's curiosity. I believe our listeners have fantastic takeaway from one today. Lovely discussion. You can
Thank
get
you.
connect to one through her social media network, and I saw some lovely articles she have written on curiosity and creativity. Just have a look and do visit her website, go.worksmartadvantage.com. Fantastic, some tools and some techniques she has shared, and you can get in touch. She's very very friendly person. She will
Yes, I'm
reply.
always welcome to reach out to me.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, that was one lie, DuMone, founder and creative culture strategist and founder at worksmartadvantage.com. One, thank you very much for your valuable time. I know it's very early in the morning or in US. Spending your valuable time in the cafe, and looking forward to meet you another exciting episode.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I hope to connect with you further and some of your listeners as well.